The Elder Scrolls 6, a game that appears to be more of a myth and legend than, well, an actual game. Likely because the announcement trailer came out 6 years ago! Because the announcement trailer is as old as the development time for Skyrim, there has been a lot of debate around which province the game will take place in. Perhaps Valenwood, or Blackmarsh, or even High Rock. However, I believe that the game will be taking place in Hammerfell, and I feel there's a lot of evidence to back up such a claim. Hello my fellow hirelings of House Telvanni, I'm Neloth, and today we are going to be talking about why The Elder Scrolls 6 will most likely be set in Hammerfell. Although this is a moot point because we all know Skyrim is going to be the next location in Skyrim 2 Special Dragonborn Edition, but let's just try to suspend our disbelief. Before beginning, I would like to thank my channel members Mirak and Sovdark. And if you would like to see my videos earlier by either 24 hours or even 3 days, then consider becoming a member. All members get early access, and Oathman and Mouths will get shoutouts at the very beginning of the video. With all that being said, let us dive into the sands of the Alakir. So I'm going to be presenting evidence in order from the most damning to the least damning, and the first piece of evidence isn't actually the announcement trailer from 6 fucking years ago, but actually a post Bethesda made 4 years ago. God, I'm 20, why do I feel so old? This tweet from the Elder Scrolls Twitter account reads, "Transcribe the past and map the future, here's to a happy new year." Now, before reading into this, it should be noted that this came from the Elder Scrolls Twitter account and not the Elder Scrolls Online account, nor any other Bethesda-related account. Anyways, in this photo we can see 3 separate lights. One on a book with some coins, one on top of the City of Solitude, and one very interestingly placed on Hammerfell. Not High Rock, not Cyrodiil, but Hammerfell. Now, let's actually do what Bethesda asks of us, like the cucks we are, and transcribe the past and map the future. The light on top of Solitude most likely signifies the past, as it is the capital of Skyrim and represents all of Skyrim, which is the past game. The second light by the coins represents the present, or at least the present from 2020, because each of the 4 coins we see are collectible coins that came out with the Greymoor expansion that also took place in Hafengar or in the Solitude area. The first is the back of High King Svagrim's coin. Second is the back of the Khajiit Main's coin. The third is difficult to see, but you can scarcely make out the tribunal symbol, so it is the back of the Vex coin. And the fourth is the hardest to see, but we can sort of make out the name Queen Irene, so it is the front of Queen Irene's coin. It should be noted that the Greymoor DLC came out on May 26th, 2020, around 6 months before this tweet, so I think it's safe to assume that the light represents the present of the Elder Scrolls with the Elder Scrolls Online. And the most important light is the third right below the words Hammerfell. Again, this light is very uniquely placed, and it's not on any borders, nor is the camera focusing on Cyrodiil or High Rock, which seems to be deliberately covered up by leaves and birch. I don't know what that is. The camera is fixated more on Skyrim, yes, but also Hammerfell is just so uniquely placed along with the light representing the future, which I think is damning enough evidence for Hammerfell being the location of The Elder Scrolls 6. Although sadly, because of this post, it seems very unlikely that High Rock will be included as well, combining the 2 nations together, which is the dream of every Elder Scrolls fan, myself included. Additionally, below the light, we can see that this map was produced in the year 182 of the 4th era. Now, this is heavy speculation on my part, and I don't even believe it myself, But this could hint at the game being set in the year 182, which is 7 years after the Great War ended and Hammerfell left the Empire, and 2 years after Hammerfell forced the Aldmeri Dominion to withdraw from the land. Could be an interesting time period, but I would personally prefer that the game be set a few years after Skyrim, which is a trend that every mainstream Elder Scrolls game has followed. Alright, now I think it's time for us to transition to the infamous announcement trailer. Now, I do want to say that I don't really consider the announcement trailer to be credible anymore, since when the announcement was dropped, Starfield wouldn't be released for another 5 years, and The Elder Scrolls 6 was likely in pre-production at that point. So the actual landscape for the map of The Elder Scrolls 6 likely wasn't even fully made yet, but I don't work at the company, so what the fuck do I know? Anyways, the most significant sight in this trailer is the landmass out by what appears to be the ocean. It looks to be at least 3 peninsulas, which each get progressively bigger. Now, if we take a closer look at Hammerfell, we can see maybe not full-blown peninsulas, but 3 bits of landmass poking out into the Iliac Bay and getting, guess this, progressively bigger. Now, I believe we are seeing the northern part of Hammerfell going across the Iliac Bay, which not only works well geographically, but I think this works well from an advertising perspective as well, because the Iliac Bay was the region you played in the game Daggerfall. So, showcasing that region may be more significant for fans and more advertisable than a section of Hammerfell we don't really know. However, one problem I do have with this area being likely is that we don't see high rock at all. We only see just pure ocean, although again, since this trailer is older than my fucking YouTube channel, I don't really take that too much into account. Another location could be along the coast of Tanith and Rihad in southern Hammerfell, however I find this less likely as we should be seeing Hugh's Bane since it's so close. Moving away from the ocean, we can see straight at the beginning of the trailer some trees that look to belong in a more arid savanna biome, which I feel would make Hammerfell or elsewhere as likely candidates. In fact, the whole region seems to contain quite a lot of grass and mountains, but also what appears to be sand as well, though it's hard to tell due to the shade. And moving on to the elephant in the room is the structure to the left, which appears to be some sort of ruin. While more blurry than my eyesight after reading the Elder Scrolls, we can see by the color and maybe the texture that it could be made of sandstone, which would further indicate this location being in either Hammerfell or elsewhere. However, when comparing Redguard architecture to Khajiit architecture, I feel these ruins fall more in line with the Redguards since they have a more spherical rigid architecture, while the Khajiit have a more pointy Chinese style kind of architecture. One last thing to note is that the title for the trailer that shows The Elder Scrolls 6 also looks to be a bronzy kind of brown, which gives me more of an arid desert vibe similar to Dune, sort of. Now, I want to quickly talk about the map sizes before getting into more of the lore aspect of things. If Bethesda wants to keep the map sizes the same as Skyrim, which I would say is recommended, there are some locations that I think wouldn't work from a gameplay perspective. Skyrim, Cyrodiil, and Morrowind are immediately out, as we have already been to them in the more streamlined games. Elsewhere is too small, which is why even though the trailer is more arid and desert-like, I don't think it is in the Khajiit homeland. Also, the music in the trailer is not very Khajiit. Elsewhere is only half the size of Skyrim, and yes, you could expand the overall world with a bigger on the inside approach, which ESO does all the time, especially in the High Isle DLC, or combine Elsewhere with Valenwood, but I just don't think it would work, especially with the evidence I have previously shown. Black Marsh would be terrible in my opinion, not just because they seem overall unaffected by the current politics of the world, with the exception of Morrowind, but most other races can't survive long in Black Marsh without getting disfigured. Flesh flies inhabit a great deal of Blackmarsh and feast on flesh. In the book, The Argonian Account, we see many individuals stationed in Blackmarsh have their ears and noses eaten off. And some Imperials were bitten so many times by the flesh flies that their skin turned scale-like, almost looking like Argonians themselves. Because of this, I feel Blackmarsh would be a terrible location, and the structures there really aren't that impressive. The Somerset Isles is also a terrible idea since the region is the headquarters for the Thalmor and likely doesn't accept any foreigners whatsoever. This was the case in ESO before Queen Irene rose to power. High Rock is a location that many people point at, however, I think it's also unlikely due to its size being that of elsewhere but skinnier, and also the fact that there isn't too much happening of interest during the Fourth Era, with the exception of Orsinium getting sacked for the 400th time. Hammerfell seems to be the only location that can work due to its size being that of Skyrim, and also the fact that in ESO, Hammerfell seems to be largely ignored, with almost every other continent being explored except for Hammerfell, which hasn't had a new addition since 2016 with the Thieves Guild expansion. But even then, that expansion only showcased a small section that is barely attached to Hammerfell, at least in the physical sense. Lore-wise, it also makes a lot of sense for Hammerfell to be the location of the next game. Before the Great War began, an ambassador from the Aldmeri Dominion came to the newly crowned Titus Mede II with a long list of demands. These demands included staggering tributes, the disbandment of the Blades, outlawing the worship of Talos, and more importantly for this video, ceding large amounts of Hammerfell to the Aldmeri Dominion. Naturally, Titus Mede rejected this offer, and the ambassador then pushed over a cart that contained the heads of every single Blades agent stationed in Somerset and Valenwood. When this happened, war began. Within days, not only did the Dominion launch an invasion into Cyrodiil, but they also simultaneously launched invasions into Hammerfell as well. The legate, Justianus Quintus, who wrote the book The Great War, proposes the theory that the invasion of Cyrodiil was simply a diversion, and that Hammerfell was the real goal. The Dominion would have probably conquered Hammerfell if it wasn't for General Decianus, who quote-unquote discharged soldiers so they could stay in Hammerfell while he was reassigned to take back the Imperial City from the Dominion. However, when the war ended, Titus Mede signed the White Gold Concordat, which was a treaty that still banned the worship of Talos and gave up a large section of southern Hammerfell to the Dominion. Hammerfell refused to accept this treaty, which forced Titus Mede to renounce all of Hammerfell, forcing the Redguards to ultimately stand alone. And so they fought the Dominion for 5 more years until peace came in the form of a treaty called the Second Treaty of Stros Mackay, which forced the Dominion to withdraw. In the game of Skyrim, there is a civil war being fought between the Stormcloaks and the Imperial Loyalists. You might have heard of it. There are numerous reasons for this war beginning, but the largest reason was the outlawing of Talos worship from the White Gold Concordat. But that treaty didn't just affect Skyrim, but also Hammerfell, with them supposedly having to secede their lands. This treaty is responsible for some of the major events in the game of Skyrim, so why couldn't this treaty also be responsible for the events of a game set in Hammerfell as well? Additionally, Hammerfell is extremely weakened, with most of southern Hammerfell being obliterated, which could set the stage for a hero to come in and restore those lands, similar to how Skyrim was weakened and restored by a dragon-blooded hero. And also, a game set in Hammerfell could allow a big question to be answered. What the hell does the Dominion want with Hammerfell? The legate Justinius Quintus proposes the Dominion wanted to sow lasting bitterness between Hammerfell and the Empire. But I believe there's more that the Aldmeri Dominion, or at least the faction that rules them, the Thalmor, want. They want something from Hammerfell. Maybe an artifact, or a person, we don't know. But again, the whole Great War started out as a conquest of Hammerfell, so the Thalmor desire something in those lands. The Thalmor are also a dark, looming threat as seen in the events of Skyrim. The Thalmor are supremacists who believe themselves to be superior to man and really anyone else, and are zealously dedicated to rooting out the worship of Talos, a god that is vitally important in the previous game of Oblivion. Additionally, regardless of what side you fight for in the Civil War, when that war's over, either Ulfric Stormcloak or General Tullius will mention that the real threat is the Thalmor. Their second-in-commands, Legate Ricka or Galmar Stonefist, will say the same. We can't really fight the Thalmor head-on, and can only really fight skirmishes of them from the shadows, but Skyrim sets up the Thalmor as this looming threat. A threat that might become more prevalent in a game set in Hammerfell since the Thalmor desire control over it. One final note. If this is true, this would not be the first time Bethesda has set up a main faction that would be seen in a future game. In Fallout 3, when playing the quest The Replicated Man, we briefly hear about the Institute and the Railroad. Two factions that are vitally important in the future game of Fallout 4. Could this mean that the Thalmor will be seen much more in depth? Will we see them try to make another attempt at Hammerfell, with us playing the hero that thwarts or even aids them? Well, I guess we'll find out in 4 more decades, boys! And that is all I wrote. A video where I present a tremendous amount of evidence as to why I believe that The Elder Scrolls 6 will most likely be set in Hammerfell. I wanted to make this video as I still see people debate where the next game is going to take place, and some of them don't even bring up Hammerfell. And when I made my video discussing the potential factions of The Elder Scrolls 6, I did get yelled at by a few commentators who were very angry that I would even suggest the game would be set in Hammerfell while presenting no evidence, so here's my video doing just that. There are other videos that go into more details on certain aspects of evidence I have brought up, like Camelworks going more in depth on the trailer, but I wanted to broadly cover everything. So with all that being said, make sure to like the like button, like the subscribe button, and like the bell notification down below to be updated on future videos. And I will see you whenever the fuck I decide to upload again. House Telvanni be with you.
Please, O hero of Skyrim, I shall be ever so grateful.